Hello, welcome to the week that was. Protests against President Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital continued in several countries. One of the largest was in Beirut, which saw clashes between demonstrators and the police. Several rockets were fired into Israel from Gaza, with the inevitable airstrikes coming as the response. However, in Palestine, despite several protesters being killed, it was less days of rage, more days of despair. And to counter despair, the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation met in Istanbul and declared East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine. So unity in the declaration, but not in the meeting. There were no concrete sanctions against either the USA or Israel. President Erdogan hosted the event, and many countries sent their heads of government or state. For example, King Abdullah of Jordan attended, as did President Rouhani of Iran. But King Salman of Saudi Arabia wasn't there, nor was the Crown Prince. Riyadh represented only by a foreign ministry official. The increasing tensions between Turkey and the USA were apparent. President Erdogan said bluntly there was no longer any question of the US being a mediator in the peace process. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister was meeting the EU's foreign policy chief, Federica Mogherini, hoping the Europeans would follow Mr. Trump's lead. Instead, he got the Brussels brush off. Ms. Mogherini told him there was full EU unity. They would not be doing this. Russia's president spent a day in what amounted to a whirlwind Middle East victory lap, visiting Syria, Egypt and Turkey. At an airbase in Syria, he met President Assad and spoke to Russian troops. He declared victory over ISIL and said he was going to reduce the Russian presence in Syria. However, he later confirmed his intention to enlarge the port in Tartus, where the Russians have a base. The plan is to enable bigger Russian warships to dock there. On to Egypt, where he signed a deal for the construction of the country's first nuclear power plant. Over to Turkey for a deal to sell a missile system to a NATO country. Russia is back in the Middle East. The World Bank decision to stop financing upstream energy projects didn't get the attention it deserved in most news media outlets. This came at the One Planet Summit, hosted by Emmanuel Macron, and is part of a drive to help the shift from fossil fuels to renewables. President Trump's week was ruined by the voters of Alabama. They elected a Democrat to the Senate for the first time in 25 years. Republican Roy Moore battled a string of sexual assault allegations and lost to Democrat Doug Jones. The Republican majority in the Senate is now just 51 to 49, and next year come the midterm elections. The UK's ruling Conservatives lost a vote after several of Prime Minister May's own MPs defied her and backed an amendment giving Parliament a vote on the final Brexit deal struck with Brussels, which of course means if they don't like the eventual deal, they can vote it down, and where that might leave Brexit is unclear. Finally, fancy a movie? The younger generation in Saudi Arabia certainly does, and this week the kingdom announced it will allow commercial cinemas to open next year. The lifting of a 35-year-long ban on cinemas follows other liberalisation measures for next year, such as allowing women to drive. So soon, they can drive to the cinema. Back to the Future's a good film. That was the week that was. See you next time.